Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We are looking at a fascinating breakdown of how a seemingly innocent, incredibly common gardening mistake is actively ruining tomato yields right now. Honestly, if you've ever felt totally frustrated by beautiful, lush tomato plants that end up yielding almost nothing, you are definitely not alone. The sources we're exploring today get into the exact mechanics of why this happens, and better yet, exactly how to fix it.
We are looking at a really stark contrast here. We're comparing a completely dismal green monster year that yielded a measly 12 pounds of tomatoes against a massive record year that pushed out 43 pounds. And here's the really wild part. Both of these harvests came from the exact same 4x8 raised bed. They used the exact same seeds, they grew in the exact same soil, and they got the exact same amount of water.
43 pounds, weighed out precisely on a digital kitchen scale. And the absolute crucial point to remember here is that this staggering harvest came from changing literally one single variable. The only thing that changed was how and when the plants were fed. It's a fundamental shift in strategy that kind of turns everything we think we know about fertilizing totally on its head.
So, to fix this, we're going to walk through a 5-step schedule. We'll cover the tomato fertilizer trap, feeding for strong roots, avoiding the green monster, the crucial flowering switch, and finally, consistent water and ash.
Step 1. The tomato fertilizer trap. Reading the bag.
So every fertilizer bag has this kind of secret code on it. Those 3 numbers separated by dashes, that's the NPK ratio, and they each have a highly specific job. The first number is nitrogen, and its whole job is to build leaves. The middle number is phosphorus, which builds up the roots and flowers. And the third number is potassium, which builds the actual fruit itself. The trap here is that most generic tomato food bags are just heavily loaded with nitrogen. That means if you dump it on all season long, you're just pouring leaf food onto a plant when what you actually want is fruit. You really have to stop feeding blind and start feeding on purpose.
Step 2. Feeding for strong roots. Day of planting.
Timing is absolutely everything. You want to get those plants in the ground about 14 days after your last frost, which, is around mid-March in places like Sacramento. But the real magic, it happens down in the hole itself. When you dig that planting hole, you need to work in 2 shovels of finished compost and a handful of bone meal right where the roots are going to sit. Bone meal is packed with phosphorus. Remember, that middle number on our chart. Adding high phosphorus directly to the hole literally tells that young transplant to push all its energy deep underground to build a massive, strong root system. If you just drop a seedling into bare native clay, it'll just sit there sulking for weeks. Feed the hole and the roots get straight to work.
Step 3. Avoiding the green monster during the vegetative stage.
During those first 4 to 5 weeks, your young plant is in its vegetative stage. It's building its frame. It's growing the thick stems and leaves it's going to need to physically support all that heavy fruit later on. Now, the plant does want a little nitrogen right now, but the absolute key word here is little. You want to give it only 1 light nitrogen feeding to keep things moving. Just 1. And this is exactly where so many gardeners go off the rails. They think, well, if a little fertilizer is good, a scoop every week is going to be way better. But if you continuously dump high nitrogen feed onto a young plant, you're going to create a green monster. You'll grow the most beautiful 5-foot-tall, lush, dark green plant you have ever seen. I mean, it looks like a massive success, until you dig through that leafy jungle and find only a dozen sad little tomatoes hiding inside. The plant did exactly what you told it to do. It made leaves because you just kept feeding it nitrogen. We want a sturdy frame, guys, not a green monster.
Step 4. The crucial flowering switch. The starting gun. The source material features this brilliant quote from Gloria. She's a mentor who's been growing food on a San Francisco balcony for over 20 years. She says, the plant tells you when it's hungry and what for. You just have to learn to read it. And honestly, that is such a profound shift in mindset. You simply cannot rely on some rigid calendar date to know when to change your feeding routine. You've got to look for the visual cues the plant is actually giving you. And here's your ultimate visual cue, the first flower clusters. You need to treat those first little yellow blooms exactly like a starting gun. The absolute moment you see them open up, the plant is signaling that it's completely done growing leaves and it is ready to make fruit. On that exact day, you must cut nitrogen completely. 0 nitrogen. If you give it nitrogen now, you're dragging it right back into leaf-making mode and starving your harvest. Instead, you switch over to a high potassium feed, where that third number on the bag is the biggest, and you apply it every 10 to 14 days. That is how you feed the fruit.
Step 5. Consistent water and ash holding, the line.
Okay, so you've made the switch to high potassium feed. Awesome. But here's the catch. Potassium can only do its job and move through the soil if the ground stays evenly and deeply moist. Erratic watering will completely sabotage your perfect feeding schedule, and it shows up in two very ugly ways. First is blossom end rot. You know those nasty black sunken patches on the bottom of the tomato? That happens because the plant literally cannot move calcium into the fruit through dry soil. Second is cracking. This happens when the soil dries out and then you suddenly flood it with water. The fruit swells way too fast and literally splits wide open. You absolutely must water deep and consistent, letting just the top inch dry out before you do your next deep soak.
Now, assuming you've got your watering completely dialed in, let's reveal that cheap, free ingredient we promised earlier, the one that literally nobody seems to talk about, but that gives your plants an unbelievable boost right as they start fruiting. Any guesses?
The secret is exactly 1/4 cup, and that 1/4 cup is filled with plain, cooled wood ash. You can source it for free right out of a fireplace or a charcoal grill. You just take this and lightly scratch it into the top inch of soil around each plant the moment those first flower clusters open.
So why does this work so incredibly well? Well, because wood ash is absolutely loaded with potassium. It hands the plant this massive shot of the exact nutrient it's craving at the precise moment it stops growing leaves and starts making tomatoes. This drives the fruit set and literally pushes sugars right up into the tomato, giving you that incredible, rich flavor you can just never, ever find in a grocery store. But listen, there is a crucial warning here. Wood ash raises the soil pH, it makes it alkaline. You must use only 1/4 cup per plant once a season. Do not just dump a whole coffee can in there or you will ruin the entire bed. 1/4 cup is the literal difference between a free boost and a massive mistake.
Let's map out this entire season real quick, just to see the rhythm. Mid-March, we feed the roots. Weeks 1 through 5, we build the frame. At the first flowers, we switch to fruit feeding, and all the way through the harvest, we keep things nice and steady. What's amazing is that resources like the creator's 30-day kitchen scrap garden protocol book actually show how you can fuel every single phase of this timeline using free scraps from your own kitchen. You don't even necessarily need to buy commercial fertilizers if you just know how to compost correctly.
So, here's our final summary of the 4 precise, actionable moves. 1. Root feed with high phosphorus bone meal at planting. 2. Give 1 light nitrogen feed to build out the frame. 3. The big switch. Cut nitrogen completely and switch to potassium the very day that first yellow flower opens. And 4. Maintain steady, deep watering and scratch in just 1/4 cup of wood ash. These 4 simple moves are exactly what turned a super frustrating, leafy green monster into a 43-pound triumph in the exact same raised bed. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to permanently change how you approach your garden next spring. Really ask yourself, are you just feeding a tomato plant blindly? Or are you finally feeding its specific life stage? Match the feed to the stage, listen to what the plant is actually telling you, and you will finally stop fighting your own garden. I highly, highly recommend trying this switch this season, even if it's just on 1 single plant, just to see the results for yourself.